You want to be able to train your neurological system to create this dynamic round pedal stroke in a very efficient way. So if you do a nice flat road, very easy gear, 10 seconds on, so it's not very taxing cardiovascularly, and you just start spinning to a point where you start bouncing on that saddle. So maybe at the very beginning you're bouncing at 100 RPM, right? So when you back off and you did your 10 seconds, you started bouncing, you just stop, right? Relax, and then maybe do a couple of repeats of that. Well, over time, all of a sudden that point where you start bouncing on the saddle is going to be 130 or 140 RPMs, where you can do it very smoothly and efficiently. So all of a sudden you've trained your neuromuscular system to fire this circular pedal stroke very fast. So when you back it back down, instead of backing it down to like 80, which might be your natural, you might now back it down to 85 and all of a sudden have this very efficient round pedal stroke. Or legs, so when you're riding a road bike, you're using your hip flexor quite a bit as you pedal, right? And you kind of stay a little bit more of an open position because your hip wants to work and your hip flexor wants to work in a certain length tension relationship. If you start closing it off even on a road bike, it gets really hard to pull this up. And some people, have a limitation here in their hip. This is it. That's their range of motion through their hip right here. And some people have really good range of motion through their hip. So we'd of course weeded that out in the assessment. It's not necessarily always good from a now glute functionality because that's where you're getting power. So we don't want it around the back just because we can get up higher here and get lower down here because now we can't pedal out of our glute. So we still want to maintain good posture. We call it a neutral spine, or like in a sports ready position. So you see tennis players, they're ready. They have a very neutral spine, butts out, they're ready to go, right? Well, all of a sudden you don't see tennis players doing this, right? They're not going anywhere. So we want to maintain that posture even on a tri bike. So we want to get that butt out so that when we're coming through the downstroke, we can use that glute, which is very powerful muscle, very effectively. But most people are trying to adopt these super low positions, so they have to round because it's easier for their hip flexor to function. And now you've just eliminated your glute out of this whole equation. So but as you move on to a time trial bike, all of a sudden, instead of fighting gravity with this whole leg as you lift it up over the top of that pedal stroke, you're actually now moving forward in the saddle. So the pedaling is, in a sense, a little more behind you. And now you don't even have to really lift that thing. It just pendulums in space. Even if I'm bending way down here, it just kind of hangs out down there. So that's created efficiency in how much energy and how much muscle you're using in the hip. So now you've just done this whole bike ride. You've used all of your skeletal system. You haven't been fighting gravity. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to run better, right? So those are some of the keys to why an aero bike works. Yeah.